It's only Tuesday. It's only Tuesday, April the 5th. And here's Prayer Deck link. So go ahead and log into that, guys. We're gonna get rolling. We're gonna talk about Vietnam and kind of finish up the Cold War. We're not gonna say this is the official end of the Cold War because it's not. We're just gonna put a pin in it because we're gonna talk about other stuff that's going on during this same time period. Because the Cold War is like a 50-year period. What's up, Ashley? So we're gonna finish up. This is the last like major war in the Cold War. Then we're gonna talk about Civil Rights era. Then we're gonna go on spring break, and then we're gonna talk about Nixon, Reagan, and then the end of the Cold War and you know the present, the modern times. Slap Yo Mama seasoning is awesome, Rose. All right, again, here's that Prayer Deck link for you. Go ahead and log in. Let me share my screen with y'all. We're going to get rolling. Only 8 people have logged in out of 31. Let's go. Come on, people. What's filling up your bucket today? What's draining your bucket? I know what's draining my bucket today. Only Tuesday. But it's 7 more days till spring break. What's filling my bucket? I don't know. It's sunny outside. Next Friday, Miriam. Next Friday. Friday the 15th. There is no school. Molly's birthday is tomorrow. Make sure we tell Molly happy birthday. Let me write that down. Oh, we're not going to have class tomorrow because it's Wednesday. So happy birthday, Molly. I did get out my notebook. And I wrote it down. Molly's birthday tomorrow. Ashley, today's your birthday? Happy birthday. I'm going to check that. Rose going turkey hunting, but her knee hurts. No electronics because you're grounded. What'd you do? Oh, state testing today. Testing Thursday. All right. Seems like a lot of us are in good moods, which is great. That's good to hear. Although some of us, we still have testing, and I get it. Today's learning target. It's the same as yesterday, guys. We're going to look at the Vietnam War, we're going to analyze how the Cold War and the conflicts in Vietnam influenced domestic and international politics between World War II and 1992. Our recap, the United States intervenes in Southeast Asia because of what we call the domino theory. Right? The domino theory was basically if one country fell to communism, all the rest of them in Southeast Asia will fall to communism. So we have to stop that one domino from falling. And at the start of Vietnam, the American citizens were very supportive of this war. But by 1968, which is going to be like a year of living hell, it seems. 1968, that is going to be like the 2020 of this generation. Several disastrous events will transpire, and television is going to bring the images of the Vietnam War into America's living rooms. So like we said before, that World War II is the first war that we record, that we film. Vietnam's going to be the first war where people are going to be able to tune in on and watch it on TV rather than see like a newsreel at a movie theater. Okay? And this is going to really sway public opinion against the war. So here's a quick timeline of the war, and I'm just going to go over the highlights. November 2nd, 1963, this is when Ngo Dinh Diem is overthrown, the leader of South Vietnam. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution happens in 1964. Operation Rolling Thunder, 1965 to 1968. It's the first stage of the U.S. involvement in Vietnam. The U.S. Navy and the Air Force start bombing raids on North Vietnam. The Tet Offensive, January 30th to September 23rd, 1968. The My Lai Massacre, March 16th of 1968. Paris Peace Talks, May of 1968. Operation Breakfast, 1969 to May of 1970. And this is where, during the Vietnam War, North Vietnamese troops will receive supplies through Cambodia. President Johnson will authorize covert missions to determine the location of military bases in East Cambodia. And then when Richard Nixon gets elected in 1968, he's going to find out about this and then start a bombing campaign on these bases in eastern Cambodia. And then in 1975, the communists, the United States will pull out of Vietnam, and the communists will capture the capital city of South Vietnam, Saigon, and Vietnam will fall to communism. And then Saigon will be renamed to Ho Chi Minh City. So let's talk about bringing the war into our living rooms. The television coverage of Vietnam was nightly, and it depicted bloody, graphic images of fighting and death. And this often affected people emotionally, and many people became sickened by the sight of what was happening. You guys have to keep in mind, like, you didn't show stuff like graphic images like this in on TV and in movies. There was like no HBO or Game of Thrones or things like that where they showed like violence to this extent. Right, we've become, as a society, we've become so desensitized to graphic violence because of movies, because of TV, because of video games, because of the internet. Right, we see this stuff and go like, oh, whatever, you know. But in the 1960s, this was not the case. And as the war continued, many networks started to focus on showing more and more and more action footages. They were getting good ratings because people were tuning in to see this. And by getting these action footages, they were knowingly putting their own journalists at risk, putting them in the middle of firefights, putting them in the middle of battles, things like that. So we're going to start to see an anti-war movement growing in the United States, which we'll talk about more on Thursday. But it's going to grow stronger in size and intensity, and it's not going to be uncommon for the tone of the field reporting to adjust to those moods and these attitudes. A lot of people are going to get sick of it. And on February 27th, 1968, during the 3-minute closing of the CBS Evening News broadcast, pretty much Walter Cronkite is, at this time, like the leading news anchor. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. You know, Tucker Carlson, you could say, just because people know who he is, and his show gets a lot of ratings. Or Anderson Cooper, if you pay attention to CNN. But Walter Cronkite is like the leading news anchor. Everybody tunes in to watch him the most. Delivers a commentary in which he shares his personal view that the Vietnam War is unwinnable. And Cronkite's opinion is going to be very powerful. And it's going to influence the way many Americans view the war. Right? Again, if you tune into any of these other news stations like Fox, CNN, MSNBC, OAN, right? The anchors will interject their opinions, and those opinions carry weight with a lot of viewers. So when Cronkite gives this very real, very honest opinion, it really, really influences the way that we see the war. And really highlights the impact that media, especially television at this time, has on the American population. So how we feel so far? Does that make sense to you? Just a quick timeline and just the idea that the importance that TV is going to play in politics, in war, in journalism, in news, right? Now we have the internet, and the internet does for us now what TV did then, right? And now even the internet is changing, right? You got the metaverse, you've got TikTok, Instagram, right? Reddit. We've got all sorts of different outlets throughout the internet in order, that we use to shape our opinions. Come on, guys. There's 19 of us here, and only 5 people can answer this. Links right here. We're gonna move on here in 3, 2. Seems like most of us get it. 1. So let's talk about the My Lai massacre. Okay, on March 16th of 1968, a group of U.S. Marines entered the small neighborhood called My Lai. It was a village to root out the enemy known as the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong were like guerrilla war rebel fighters. They were a loosely affiliated group. They weren't part of the North Vietnamese army. They were like insurgents. They were regular people that were just fighting against the military. What's going to transpire throughout this day was going to be one of the most shocking events in the Vietnam War. During their time at My Lai, the Marines slaughtered more than 300 people, mostly women and children. The Marines were following the orders of Lieutenant William Calley and Captain Ernest Medina, who were operating on false information, really. The My Lai massacre ended when an Army helicopter pilot, Hugh Thompson, flew over the scene on a reconnaissance mission, and Thompson landed between the soldiers and the remaining villagers who were attempting to flee. Basically, he said he was going to use the helicopter's miniguns that were mounted on the side to open fire on the Marines if they didn't stop doing what they were doing. High-level military officers realized news of this event would likely be devastating to the war efforts. And knowing this, they decided to cover up the incident. But one soldier, Ron Riddenhauer, who was there and knew about it, started writing a campaign to bring out the truth, writing letters to everyone from the Joint Chiefs of Staff to then President Nixon. And in November of 1969, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh broke the story to the public, and Americans were absolutely appalled. In 1970, Calley and Medina are brought up on charges and court-martialed. Calley is court-martialed and sentenced to life in prison in 1971, and Calley he's released on parole in 1974. And the massacre and subsequent cover-up gave many Americans yet another reason to oppose the Vietnam War. Okay. So again, we talked about 1968 being this hell, this year of hell. Right, so we've got the My Lai massacre here, the Tet offensive, which we'll talk about a little bit. But it's also going to be the year that Martin Luther King is assassinated and Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's brother. Remember, Kennedy gets assassinated in 1963. Johnson takes over, serves the rest of his term, runs for his own term, and then decides, he's not going to run because of Vietnam. So Robert F. Kennedy, who is a very popular politician at the time, is going to run in the Democratic primary. But on April 4th of 1968, Martin Luther King is going to be shot and killed in Memphis, and you're going to see riots break out all over in 100 different American cities. Then in 1968, moments after, in June, so in April, Martin Luther King gets shot. In June, just 2 months later, Robert Kennedy is going to win the California Democratic primary and then be assassinated right after that. And people are going to go nuts. The Democratic convention in Chicago is going to be marred by political turmoil within the party, and there's going to be massive street protests outside the convention center. I believe Netflix just made a movie about this a year or two ago with Sacha Baron Cohen, the guy who plays Borat, plays Abby Hoffman. I think it's called the Chicago 8. It centers around this Chicago Democratic convention. The Chicago mayor at the time, Richard Daley, he publicly encourages aggressive action by the police, and the city became a war zone as officers and demonstrators battled in clouds of tear gas. And news photos of armed police officers clubbing unarmed journalists and students overshadowed the Democratic nominations of Hubert Humphrey for president and Edmund Muskie for vice president. So just take a second and think about that for a second, guys. Does anybody feel comfortable sharing your thoughts about this? But what I want you to think about is, does this event from 1968, does this parallel anything happen that has happened recently in the past 5 years? So let me know. Kyoshi, you said you feel comfortable sharing. Does this parallel anything in the past 5 years, you think? No, it's water. I figured I better switch to water. I put down almost a pot of coffee between 7:30 and 9.
Bro, wait, what do you mean about that?
Say that again, Kyoshi?
What do you mean about that?
About what? Like, how did these events parallel anything recently?
Yeah.
Is it similar? Did similar events to what we just discussed happen recently?
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
You need another minute to think about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Jerome, what do you think, man? Does this sound like anything that happened recently? You're fine, Jerome. No worries, no worries. Rose says, the issues between Russia and Ukraine, possibly. Molly, try refreshing. Try refreshing your big blue button. What I think, guys, do you guys remember, just 2 years ago, right around when the COVID lockdown started, George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis by police, and then all throughout the rest of the year, you see massive protests and rioting all over the country with the Black Lives Matter movements, and it's all filmed. We see, police battling protesters and journalists, and then you have the issues in Kenosha, Wisconsin with Kyle Rittenhouse, and then all of the issues that came as a result of that. Again, it's not the same thing. It's just very similar, right? Someone dies, riots break out, police, we have issues with police brutality, and on all of this is being shown on TV, which is going to rile up more and more people. They're paralleled. They're not the same, they're parallel. And this is all rolling into a presidential election year where, there's some popular candidates, but the assassination of Robert Kennedy is going to overshadow this entire election. Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey, and George Wallace are going to be the big candidates. And we're going to talk about George Wallace during the civil rights lessons more, but George Wallace is the former governor of Alabama, who's most well known for the quote when fighting against desegregating schools, meaning he openly opposed letting black and white children going to the same school, said, "Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." He ran for president and got a significant number of votes in the South, in these brown states. He actually won the electoral votes in these 5 states. And these are the three main candidates. Kennedy perhaps would have been the most favorable candidate. He probably would have won this election if he had lived to run. Mostly because Kennedy was a major player in the civil rights movement, and he had a positive track record with civil rights leaders and no connection to the Vietnam War. It's such a hot topic. One of the reasons Nixon wins is because he says he's going to pull troops out of Vietnam, and people are sick of it. The other two candidates, they conflict with one another. Conservative Southern voters sided with Alabama Governor George Wallace, which drew votes away from the Republican candidate, Nixon. But Humphrey's weaknesses as a candidate helped Nixon. So while Wallace was taking votes from Nixon, Humphrey was losing votes to Nixon. And even though Humphrey rallies before Election Day, it's not enough. Nixon's going to defeat Hubert Humphrey in one of the closest elections ever. And here's just a one-up of the Electoral College map. As you can see, Wallace is going to win 12.9% of the popular vote, and he's going to get 6, 16, 23, 33, 45 electoral votes of the 217 you need to win. So he's going to get about 25% of the 25% of the vote total of the electoral votes available. Then in 1970, we're going to have the Kent State shootings. On April 30th of 1970, President Nixon is going to announce the invasion of Cambodia and a draft that was going to involve 150,000 Americans. And protests are going to erupt nationwide again, all across the United States, particularly on college campuses. And again, if you are in the Northeast Ohio area, you know about Kent State. That's my alma mater. That's where I went to school. And I got my degree right here in my home office. I don't know if you guys can. Oh, it's right here. Kent State. But protests are going to erupt, and it's going to get out of control. The protesters are going to start a fire and burn down the ROTC building. National Guard troops are going to get called in by then Governor Jim Rhodes, and the protesters are going to start throwing rocks and things at these National Guard troops. And this is also where you get when you look at the 60s and you see the hippies putting flowers in the end of the rifles of the army guys and things like that. This is kind of where that comes from. But they're going to start throwing rocks and glass bottles. And nobody really knows when it started, but the National Guard is going to open fire on the protesters. They're going to start shooting at a group of college kids, and 4 students will be killed, 9 others will be wounded, and essentially, guys, this is a case of the federal government, of the state government shooting protesters, and it's not going to be the only case. The media coverage is going to show images of screaming students kneeling over the bodies of their slain classmates, like this one seen here. And another incident like this is going to occur 10 days later at Jackson State University in Mississippi. Kent now has a museum. If you go to the Kent campus, you can go to the May 4th. May 4th, 1970 is when this happens. You can go to the May 4th museum and tour around. And many of the people who are a part of this demonstration are still alive, and they still go to Kent. They do speeches. When I was there, they were just building the museum. You could take a class on it. You could go and see where on campus the victims were, their bodies. There's a post that's lit up, and it lights up every night of where they were killed. And you can go and walk and be a part of this. This was massive. This sent shockwaves through the entire country, and it's something that happened, in where I'm at, right in our backyard. And if you're also in the Northeast Ohio area, and this is kind of like my little ending. The late 1960s, guys, is a time when the policies of the government heavily conflict with the views of the public. By then, it's clear to most Americans that the Vietnam War, in fact, was unwinnable. And Vietnam remains one of the most divisive wars in U.S. history. So, quick opinion. Did you like the lesson? What'd you think? How well did you like it? All right, so you've got your guided notes here. They're not fill in the blank. Just make a copy for yourself. Put it in your online journal if that's what you do. If you write it in your journal, write them down. I didn't do stress check today. I did what's filling your bucket, what's draining your bucket. So what's pumping you up? What's deflating you? Why anything you need to talk? You're good? All right. Cool. Okay. But anyway, guys, just make a copy. I highlighted everything here for you. But do please summarize the lesson for me here. And then you have workbook 3.7. Literally everything from this lesson came from this workbook. Answer the questions, turn that in. And that's today. Is there any questions, guys? Anything I can help you out with? Target sessions today at 12:30 and 2:30. If you have questions, if you need help, if you want to go over grades. I was looking at grades yesterday, guys. As of yesterday, we're at a 66% pass rate, which at this point of the semester, I'll take. Not bad. But there's a number of us, there's too many of us who are failing just because we're not turning things in. So let's take this time. Let's get this, let's take a look at our to-do list. Let's make sure we've taken the Unit 1 and Unit 2 tests. Let's make sure we're doing the ed puzzles. Let's make sure we're doing the workbooks and get that stuff turned in. Let's set a goal for spring break to get caught up, because there's no excuse for anybody to fail this class. You have every opportunity in the world to succeed. I'm here for you if you need that help, especially at 12:30 and 2:30 for those target sessions. So let's get that rolling. Let's get that done. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. All right, and you guys have a great day. We'll see y'all on Thursday. Real quick, tomorrow, you do have an assignment for tomorrow. It is an ed puzzle video. It's just a crash course, Cold War in Asia. So it's going to talk about the Korean War and Vietnam and the stuff that we had gone over. So take that. It's a completion grade, and it's an easy A. Have a great day, guys. Get to science class.